This is the Under the Ring Report. And now, the guys who make wrestling podcasting too sweet. John the Flesh Wound and Cousin Tom.
And we're back with another edition of the Under the Ring Report. Tom, we've noticed that WWE is kind of bucking a trend that they've been doing for probably the last 10 to 15 years. And that is pretty much wiping out all traces of managers in their federation. And we've noticed in the last few weeks, they brought some new guys. Lito Rush is now in, and he's going to be the manager for Bobby Lashley.
Right.
And Drake Maverick.
The 205 Live general manager.
Yep. So he's now the Authors of Pain's new manager. And seeing how maybe there might be a push to help these guys who have the build, have the look, but they don't have the ability to talk very well, thought it'd be kind of cool that we talk about our favorite managers of all time.
I think that's all going to be a pretty huge list to have to whittle down because we've seen quite a few managers over the years.
Yeah, we have it. I'll let you start. I mean, there's so many that I know both of us are going to enjoy. We've talked before about some of our favorites, but you know what? Today, just go through and just kind of rattle off a few, and we'll talk about why we enjoyed them.
Okay. I'm going to save my number one for last, which I'm pretty sure it'll be the same as yours.
I agree.
So, but one of the first managers I can remember, and this is going back a ways, and everyone will know him when I name drop him here. But one of the first guys I remember more so because I just hated him because he was one of those guys always involved, real sneaky. Mm-hmm. And that was Mr. Fuji.
Yes.
And as I gotten older, I loved Mr. Fuji, but as a kid, when everything was real, I hated Mr. Fuji. Just absolutely despised Mr. Fuji. Come out and he'd throw the salt in the wrestler's eyes, or he'd do something to distract the ref. Every gimmick you could think of, he did it. Whether it was coming out waving the Japanese flag with Yokozuna, or just anything to get heat.
Well, I mean, he helped Demolition get over so well.
Oh yeah.
And that's the thing too we talk about is the ability to get over talent that had no business talking on the microphone. And I'm with you, man. He has to be. If you make a top 10 list, he's right there.
Oh yes, he's just one of those guys that sums up the 70s and 80s. And one of my favorite matches of his, you have to go back on the network to find it, and it's him and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat in a karate match. And it's just one of those things that it's like, why in the world is this going on? But, it's just something I'll always remember.
My list, I mean, I kind of go hot and cold over people I like, but a guy who I've got kind of a soft spot for is Slick,
Oh, yeah.
There was a period, I mean, because he did his job, one-man gang, Hakeem, he had to be there. Big Boss Man. Without him, I don't think that gimmick worked as well. But
right.
It was like he brought a different vibe to these wrestlers. He had the comedy approach from what he had going on, but it was the entertainment value of this guy. And some of the stuff he pulled off that maybe the match wasn't that good, but him at ringside and some of the stuff he pulled made it more entertaining because you wanted them to kick his ass because he was cheating and causing all these problems. And he was perfect, especially when he got caught by the hero of the day. He'd pull all that, don't hurt me, don't do this, and it was so over exaggerated, and it was perfect, and that's why he's always going to have a place for me. I loved seeing Slick do his thing.
Slick was just so cool, even when he was the heel. He was just always cool. It was hard not to like Slick because he always had a smile on his face when he's coming to the ring. You never saw him looking mean. He was always had a big grin in that strut. I'll never forget that strut. One of my other personal manager favorites, and it's kind of along the same era, female manager, and that was Scary Sherry.
Oh.
She was the ultimate. She could do it in the ring, out of the ring. If you wanted her to be a manager, if you wanted her to do a promo, whatever you wanted her to do, she could do it, and she did it better than some of the guys. and I mean, I can remember when she was Peggy Sue with the Honky Tonk Man.
Yep.
Which I didn't realize that's who it was until later on, of course. But it's Peggy Sue, and then she was the Macho Queen, or there's Macho King and his Queen. She's been with a who's who when she was with Shawn Michaels.
Wasn't she with Harlem Heat?
That's right. She was with Harlem Heat. Yeah. So, I'm forgetting about the WCW years. Yeah. I mean, she's been with all kinds of people, and I can still remember, she was notorious for getting in things that you're like, she's got no business being in that match. What's she doing?
Yeah.
What's she doing? And half the time she wouldn't have shoes on. It seems like every time you saw her, she was without her shoes in the ring. But she, for the life of me, I'll always remember her. Number one, as a young kid, I always thought, what's wrong with that lady and her crazy makeup? But then as I got older, man, she is so good at what she does that I wish she was still around to kind of get the recognition that she deserves.
My list here, and like I said, this is just kind of fluctuating back and forth, but this is a more recent guy.
Yeah.
But I'll fight anyone that tells me that the Undertaker and Kane gimmicks don't get over without Paul Bearer. Paul Bearer, seriously, if they don't bring that guy in, I don't think either of those gimmicks flies. And I know at the beginning it was Brother Love, but I think once Paul Bearer was planted in firmly in there, that whole thing going on between him and the Undertaker with the urn all the time, I'll never forget it. And he made those promos that they used to cut back in the day. I mean, I always remember some of the crazy stuff, like when they locked the Warrior in the coffin and stuff, and just
the scratch marks.
Yes, but I mean, oh yes, I mean everybody knows that, and he made the Undertaker who he is just because the Undertaker could be this quiet, just very menacing, dead-like creature, not really talking much, just in sentences like "rest in peace," that's it. While the Undertaker did this whole voice, and he gave you this creepy thing that you look at and go, you know what, maybe he is a funeral parlor director. And there was kind of things like that he was perfect for what they asked for, and it all just came together perfectly. And that's why you look at a manager like that, and when he's put with the right person, it works. Because I don't think with Brother Love in that role, it works.
You want to know something funny?
But
I completely forgot about Brother Love being in that role.
Oh, did you?
Well, I mean, honestly, with the old Undertaker gimmick with the urn and everything, all I see in my mind is Paul Bearer. I don't see Brother Love.
Yeah.
Like it didn't even happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just how synonymous one is with the other. I forgot all about it. I remember it now that you mentioned it, but I forgot about Brother Love. That old Undertaker, immediately, like, where's Paul Bearer at? That's my first instinct. That's how entwined they are.
Oh, yeah.
So I agree with you. I mean, there's no doubt about it that he's one of those guys. Now, my next guy I got for you.
All right.
Still going strong. You don't see him as much, but somehow the man, I don't know if it's something down that Florida or what, it doesn't seem like he ages. Always has his bullhorn.
Oh, God.
But the mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart. I mean, that guy, been around forever, somehow or another, still has hair 6 feet taller than the guy next to him. But, Jimmy Hart, mouth of the South, always ready to cut a promo, baby. If you need to sell something, Jimmy Hart is your guy. He's gonna sell it for you.
Yeah.
If you've got a couple guys that can't talk on the mic, don't worry about it. Jimmy Hart will do it. If you need a distraction down by the side of the ring, Jimmy Hart's got you, baby. He's just one of those guys that when you talk about managers, that's the quintessential manager to me.
Okay.
Over the top, nothing but a distraction to the opponent, because you're always worried about where's he at, what's he doing, what's he planning on doing. You know at some point he's going to get involved. I'm trying to think of all the people he's been with. He's with Big Boss Man.
To me, and this is just in my time period, but I always think of Jimmy Hart and the Hart Foundation and Dangerous Danny Davis. That to me is kind of that's kind of the golden age. You go way back and you think about his time as he was involved in Jerry Lawler and down there in Memphis wrestling with Andy Kaufman. Yeah, so he was involved in all that. And I mean, go ahead.
And, when Hogan come to WCW, who was the guy that was riding in the Corvette doing the Disneyland parade with him?
Yeah.
Jimmy Hart.
But you know what, though, too? That Jimmy Hart was different. I liked the heel Jimmy Hart better than the face.
I did too. That's the one I remember the most. He did it was in WCW. It was a match with Ray Traylor, which was Big Boss Man. Yeah. Versus, he was Earthquake. I can't think of his actual name, but Jimmy Hart was supposed to climb up a pole and get something. Mm-hmm. And he takes like a half gainer off the backside of that.
Yeah, poor guy. Oh, my God. And you know what, though, too? The nice thing about Jimmy was he was also very instrumental in a lot of the entrance music that we grew up with as kids, if you think about that. Some people forget about, but he had a lot to do with a lot of that stuff in the early years. People kind of forget about that part of what Jimmy Hart did.
Yeah, he's a huge part when you think of wrestling managers. I mean, I don't think you can have a top 10 list without having the Mouth of the South in there, just because of who he's been with over the years and just how long the man has been around.
One theme song is still used to this day, and that's Shawn Michaels, Sexy Boy. That is all him, you know, and people forget that. But
yeah, I'm glad I wasn't a huge Shawn Michaels fan when I was young, because I had a few buddies that were, and it's like, are you really singing I'm a Sexy Boy?
You know, though, it was catchy as hell. And it's the same way, too, if you think about it. Honky Tonk Man's theme song he came up with, Brutus the Barber, Beefcake, all those guys back then. He came up with most of that stuff. I mean, I believe he came up with the NWO Wolfpack song. So
really?
Yeah. So he was, like I said, he was very instrumental in most of that stuff.
Yeah. See, that's exactly why he's on my list.
There you go. All right. So if I go through my list, I got to put Paul Heyman there, you know, because Paul's been Paulie Dangerous, part of the Dangerous Alliance. He had everything going there. But I mean, I think most people have really taken notice to his work when he's been in WWE, unfortunately, you know, because a lot of people didn't watch as much WCW or ECW to see some of his early work as he was coming up. But
sure,
Heyman right now is the perfect mold for a manager. You know, you put him with a guy like Brock Lesnar, who's not a great talker, but he's able to sell Brock Lesnar as a beast that can destroy anyone. And the only time once in a while that it works to be with a talker, you know, him and CM Punk were perfect because they played off each other, and that just works. And there's other instances of that too, and we'll get to that manager later. But overall, he just enhances the talent. He's not there to get himself over. He's there to get the talent over. And I mean, unfortunately, you know, Curtis Axel, that didn't work. I just don't think they set it up correctly. I think he could have done more with him, but, you know, Curtis Axel's a good mid-card wrestler, but he's never going to be a top draw, unfortunately.
Well, and the thing about Paul Heyman, he can put a promo on wet paint. I mean,
Yep.
You name it, he can talk about it, and he can give you 5 to 10, 12 minutes. You know, you let him go, he'll go for 30.
Mm-hmm.
He has a certain rhythm, the way he does things. Even back when he was Paulie Dangerously with his Zach Saved by the Bell cellular phone that he always carried with him.
Oh, dear God.
You know, that right there, just his promo ability, I think, throws him up there, along with everything else he's done. You know, not counting in the ECW stuff. You know, that there's not many who can go out there with Brock Lesnar and work with Lesnar the way he does.
My name is Paul Heyman.
Well,
and he's got the crowd chanting. That's what I love.
Brock's the type of guy that if he was with anybody else, he could easily overshadow him. You'd forget he's even with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
With Heyman being with him, he's not that type of manager. You don't forget he's there. You're always watching. And his facial expressions, he's not screaming, he's not banging on the ring, but his facial expressions in the background when something happens and he puts both hands to his face like he's in Home Alone or something.
Yep.
Those things are TV gold. They're TV gold, Jerry. TV gold.
Jesus Criminy. Oh my God. All right, man. Who would you put up on your list again then?
Well, I was sitting here thinking, and you're talking about Paul Heyman, and you can't go wrong with Paul Heyman. I'm still saving my other one.
That's
it's
okay.
probably the same as yours.
Yeah, it is. We'll talk about that.
You know, I would put like, no, I can't. I was going to say like Miss Elizabeth, but she was never a manager. She was more of a valet. She just she stood there, you know, eye candy.
Well, she wasn't. She didn't need to be there to do the talking for the Macho Man. She was a nice piece to help him in what he was doing. But yeah, I feel as though if you're looking at managers, you got to find someone who helps get a talent over that couldn't do it by themselves. I mean, Macho could have got over by himself.
Oh, sure. And like when Sherry was with him, that wasn't to get Macho over. That was just they worked well together.
Yep.
You know, he didn't need Sherry, and Sherry didn't need him, but they worked fantastic together. Mm-hmm. And plus, they had the whole storyline of, you know, she kind of kicked Liz to the curb and took her spot.
Yeah, and that worked out perfectly.
Yeah, which was great. You know, I was trying to think back on some other managers of the past, but, you know, one I keep coming back to that's kind of, he's been there and done some things, but like Dutch Mantell.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would put him in my top 10, but most people know him for when he was with Jack Swagger and he came out and did stuff. But if you go back and look at his overall career, he's got a long history in the wrestling business.
Yeah. A lot of behind-the-scenes stuff, too.
Yeah, a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. And he's one of those guys that he's mainly just a heel.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see another side. He just comes out as a heel. I'm just holding off on naming the other one.
Okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rattle off just a few guys, and I'm not going to spend much time on them. But these are just kind of honorable mention before we get to the big kahuna, which we both know we're going to talk about. People laugh at him and make fun, but I'll tell you what, without Virgil, I don't know if the $1 million gimmick gets over as good as it did.
No way. There's no way in the world it does.
Yeah.
Because you got to have a guy who just stands there and takes all the crap.
Yep. And I thought he did an excellent job of what he was doing. And together, from 87 to 91, those guys were killing it in WWE. DiBiase was hands down one of the top villains in that company during that time. And then, I take a look. There's a few other people that I just kind of glaze across real quick. I got to give a little credit to Eric Bischoff, because I think of him, even though he was with a crazy collection of talent, in a way, he was the manager for the NWO too. And I think that him being in charge helped put that
at the same time.
Yeah, helped really make people pissed off. And it's not so much his talking as it was how he positioned himself and the company because of what he was doing. I think that is why I give him a little nod for doing what he did.
Well, another one that comes to mind too when you mention that would be Teddy Long.
Yes.
And he just popped in my head. We just saw him.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
Well, when he was with Butch Reed and Farouk, he was even the manager for Mean Mark Calloway.
Yeah.
If you go back and look.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been with all kinds of people. And, a lot of people think of him now as just holler player and kind of a side attraction, just comic relief. But at one point in time, he managed some serious heavy hitters in both federations. So, I think you got to throw him in there, too.
Well, and you're going to laugh, but I'd even give a nod to the genius Lanny Poffo, because I think and it's just as I talk about again, it's certain periods, but I think his pairing with Mr. Perfect was brilliant, because together they were both kind of very arrogant wrestlers. And I think that's why the pairing together was so great. And that's why I give him a nod that he helped Mr. Perfect a lot. Perfect was getting over, but I think he helped put him even farther, because they were both just kind of that, haha, we're better than you. Here's a poem where I rip on you. And then Mr. Perfect's going to tell you how awesome he is. So
and he's going to spit his gum and knock it into the fifth row without missing.
He will, yes. Other guys I kind of think of, we touched on it for a moment. And I don't know if it's so much his managerial skills, but just the character itself. Brother Love. I mean, as a manager, if I think about some of the guys he managed, he helped Barry Horowitz during that really bad late 90s WWE thing when they were terrible. Yeah, so most of that was garbage, but I'll tell you what, his segment, his talking on the mic, he made you hate him. And I have to give him credit for that, because he did a really good job of pissing off a lot of people.
The one segment I would look forward to, because I knew I was going to be mad or something was going to happen. But I always knew when that segment came on to watch.
Yep.
You didn't want to miss that segment.
Another guy that I put up there, and I mean, he's better than these guys hands down, but Classy Freddie Blassie. You really don't need to talk much about him, but he pretty much managed the who's who of professional wrestling. Gosh, I think he did that pretty much until 86, and he was already up there in age. But he managed everybody. Just phenomenal. And with that, I could keep naming more people left and right, but I'm going to let you kick off, because I know we both have the same wrestler or the same manager.
Yeah. Well, and he was a wrestler too at one point in time. That's part of the reason he had such great in-ring work too. And that is the one and only, the Bobby the Brain Heenan, the Weasel.
Yes.
Hands down, the greatest manager in the history of professional wrestling, sports entertainment. However you want to quantify it, hands down, number one. Before he had the Heenan family, a lot of people, it's before my time, but I went back and watched. He and Nick Bockwinkel.
It was the Heenan family, my friend.
Was it the Heenan family? Well, he and Bockwinkel were fantastic together. They were amazing. Yeah. And they were two peas in a pod. You think about from the Islanders. Oh, well, geez, it's like a who's who.
You've got the Brainbusters, Arn and Tully, when they came to WWE. They get paired right up with him. Ric Flair was his guy. Mr. Perfect was his guy. I mean, remember when here's a perfect example. He paired up with the Red Rooster to try and get him over, I mean, Andre the Giant, which everybody knows, Big John Studd he had for a while. There's just so many folks. Harley Race towards the end of his career. Yeah. He had Ken Patera for a while, King Kong Bundy. It's just the who's who of professional wrestling. If you wanted to get a guy over and he wanted to be a good heel, he was probably going to get paired up with Bobby the Brain Heenan. That was
the thing with Heenan is not only was he, think about all those names, those were all guys at one point in time were struggling on their own.
Yes.
But all those guys needed something. And calling the Weasel, calling the Brain, call him whatever you want, hands down the best manager ever. He could come out, he could take the mic, and he would go for 5 to 7 minutes on whatever needed to be said. He could get in the ring, do all the distractions. He could. My favorite was when like Hogan or somebody would get their hands on him.
Oh, yeah.
Because the Weasel was the most appropriate nickname ever for him. He was always on the outside, always doing something, and all you wanted to do was choke that guy out, but you couldn't do it. And when they would finally get their hands on him, he bumped like there was no tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
You could tell he had in-ring experience from the past, and he made it count. And just one of a kind, and probably the sharpest wit on television that even today, I don't think there's anyone sharper than Bobby the Brain Heenan.
Well, the funny thing about Bobby the Brain Heenan, I think that in a different era, Bobby the Brain would have had his own TV show and probably been a comedian. But I think
his own show for a little bit.
But what I'm saying though, you know what I mean? He would have been a big time comedian because he had such great comedic timing, and that helped when he was trying to get these guys over. And it wasn't scripted; it was just go off the cuff and have at it. And he was perfect. I mean, a guy like Haku, as King Haku, do you think Haku gets over by himself?
No, because Haku's not a talker.
No.
He's a doer, but he's not a talker.
Yeah. And that's the thing. You look at that. Does he get over? Does Andre the Giant seem as scary if Bobby the Brain is not the brains behind Andre into WrestleMania 3?
No. Well, and also at that time, Andre wasn't the Andre he used to be.
No, he wasn't. He was at the very end of his life.
Slower.
Yeah.
And, you go back and watch stuff around that time. He didn't move like he used to. I mean, the Andre in the late 70s with the monster afro, that was a scary dude.
Yeah, and take a look too and go, is Rick Rude considered a formidable opponent for the Ultimate Warrior during their run in '89 if Bobby the Brain's not there to help him cheat to try and win and cause all kinds of problems for the Ultimate Warrior?
Yeah, that was the one heel out of all of them that I absolutely loved. And that was Rick Rude.
Yeah.
And that was the only time that I was okay with Bobby the Brain Heenan when I was a kid. The rest of the time, I hated him. But with Rude, I was okay with it.
Okay. And I think also the pairing with him and Mr. Perfect was perfect. But that's kind of our thoughts on managers and who we think. We grew up, and it's going to be different for everybody considering the era you grow up in. And I mean, unfortunately, the last 10 years, it's been tough to find really good managers besides Heyman that's out there.
Part of my problem, I was trying to think of someone in the last. Vicky Guerrero came to mind, but she's not really what I would consider a top 10 manager. Mm-hmm. There really hasn't, that's part of the reason I thought of Teddy Long, because he was still relevant then. Yeah. But there really hasn't been anyone that comes to mind, at least in my eyes.
No, not really. And I mean, valet female managers right now. I mean, Lana for a while, but they pulled her away. And I thought at the beginning that was a perfect pairing. But other than that, I'm interested to see where they decide to go with this, because, there's guys like Bobby Lashley who have all the tools, but when he opens his mouth, it kills all credibility for me.
It doesn't match the package.
No, it doesn't. And, he has a hard time being believable when he's sitting there going, yeah, I'm going to kick your... Yeah, no, you're not, dude. Just shut up. But there's other wrestlers out there, and not just WWE, but all over, who, no matter what, they're kind of mic challenged. There's a reason why back in the day that folks had managers to help get them over. I mean, Paul Ellering had to be there to get the Road Warriors over, I think if he would have wanted to keep up with the WWE life instead of the NXT, where he's in one location, he would have stayed with they would have been
guys.
Fine. Yeah. It's just, I mean, hey, he's getting up there in age, and I get it.
Yeah, I don't blame him a bit. He helped those guys in NXT.
Oh, he did. And you know what? He can go down there, and probably they'll put him with another tag team down the line. He'll help get those guys over. But at that age, I don't blame him. I wouldn't want to be on tour all the time.
It's funny because they come out, then they fire Ellering, and then they were on like the next week, and then you didn't see him. Well, at least to me, it didn't seem like you saw him for like a month. And on TV.
They were lost.
Yeah, as many hours of programming as WWE has on their network, and you can't find two gigantic guys on a tag team. That's a problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, they needed somebody. Without a doubt.
But that's our thoughts. We want more managers. Come on. Everyone, bring us more managers. I don't care who it is. Ric Flair, you can come back and do some managing. That's fine with me.
Even somebody like, All in Weekend, we saw Penelope Ford.
Yep.
She got in the ring. She did her thing. She's new to me, but I was impressed. Like, bring someone like that out. I'd be more than happy to have somebody there ringside.
Yeah, they should. And you know what? It helps get more than one person over. Maybe there's a person who's a great talker, and I look at other folks. I look at Enzo Amore. All right, guy sucked as a wrestler. sucked.
Yep, perfect manager.
He would, if they had, instead of trying to push those guys as a tag team, instead he would have came out and Big Cass's manager. He would have made Big Cass a star. I really think so, because Big Cass had no business being on the mic.
Well, no, he did not, does not. You could argue that they really pretty much made him manager of 205 Live when they put him there just to get ratings.
Yeah, and that was obvious, but he had to get in trouble and things just kind of went down there. But anyway, that's our show on managers, guys. Thanks a lot for joining us. And once again, thank you for taking a listen to the show. We really enjoy it. Make sure to go to the website, undertheringreport.com. Download all the latest episodes and keep up to date. And if you do us a favor, subscribe to the podcast. Once again, we'll be back next week with more of the Under the Ring Report.
You're listening to Under the Ring Report with Bad Barry Horowitz. And if you're not listening, you're going to get stretched and beat up.
Follow the Under the Ring Report on Twitter at UTRR Podcast. You can subscribe to the Under the Ring Report on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher, or visit undertheringreport.com. Thanks for listening to the Under the Ring Report.